Program. You were in room A. And I'll begin by introducing our presenters today. So we have in the room Donald Nicholls, Director of the Cree Nation Government Department of Justice and Correctional Services. Donald is a member of the Cree Nation of the Nississing and EU Ischii. He is currently the Director of the Cree Nation Government Department of Justice and Correctional Services. He is also responsible for the Indigenous-related International Human Rights File for the Cree Nation of EU Ischii, which includes involvement in various national and international human rights fora, working groups, and expert mechanisms. Mr. Nicholls has served in the Executive Director Office of the Cree Nation Government. He has also served as a director in the administrative branch of the Cree Nation Government for many years. In addition to teaching law at the University of Arizona, Mr. Nicholls has led Indigenous-related justice and international human rights law initiatives. Mr. Nicholls holds 3 law degrees and is a Harvard School of Business graduate.
Sweet.
Mr. Nicholls has made it part of his mission to build the capacity of communities and organizations to give back to people the ability to resolve conflict through neutral and safe processes. We also have today Daniel Markus, who's the Executive Director at the Canadian Institute for Conflict Resolution. Daniel Markus is the Executive Director and a Board Director for Forgiving and for Restores Canada, as well as 2 Latin American foundations that foster the practice of forgiveness and develop peace education programs. He holds a third-party neutral certificate from CICR, a master's degree in conflict studies from St. Paul University, and a master's degree in human development from the Universidad Iberoamericana, Mexico. Daniel is committed to restoring human relationships and believes that victims can become victors and all communities can become agents of positive change and peace. So welcome to both of our presenters today. I will let you kick it off.
Thank you, Nina, and welcome everyone. I cannot see all the faces here at once, but thank you for joining today in a community of practice there's more people probably that want to be welcome in the waiting room, Nina. I don't know if that can be done from there. It's always great to learn with others. And it's always great to do it in a community. Learning only comes from experience and from sharing. So I'm so happy that you are part of this today. And I hope that what Dawn and I can share with you is meaningful and we can engage in a meaningful conversation. I'm director at the Canadian Institute for Conflict Resolution, CICR. 37 years ago, 35, 30, 25, CICR took a decision to work with empowering every member of the community to deal with conflicts in a different way. And it developed training, the third-party neutral approach and the community-based conflict resolution approach to empower community members to resolve differences in a way that they use their resources, their gifts and talents as a community, and every community member was included. This training has evolved and it has taken part in the same design of this training has taken part in Rwanda, in Afghanistan, in Mexico, Dominican Republic, across all levels of government in Canada, with several institutions for these 35 years. And one piece that has been particularly special for CICR is the possibility of learning through partnering with the Cree Nation of the EU Ischii, learning through bringing a program and doing something that is at the core of what CICR believes that has been different with this partnership that started 15 years ago with a vision of Don Nicholls of doing something different in his new mandate as Director of Justice in the Cree Nation government, to build a set of different restorative justice approach. And he met one of CICR trainers and they aligned and they say, we need to build a partnership. So 15 years ago, CICR started learning from our Cree partners. And today we are going to have the possibility of sharing those learnings, those insights of this program. And I'm going to speak on behalf of my experience as director that has been for a couple of years participating, witnessing in the graduation processes of each generation. There is a community dialogue and there is a process facilitated by the graduates of the program. And I'm going to speak on behalf of that experience. Most of the Cree CICR training team is busy, was very busy these weeks training in different places. So it's up to Don and us and me to talk about this vision, but we're going to do it with the respect and on behalf of that training team that wasn't able to be here with us today. And we hope that we honor the teachings and the insights that you share with us. So thank you. I wanted to give this introduction about me and pass it to Don Nicholls to let us know more about the program.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Nina. I think that for me, and I promise you, I'm not in a really nice location. I'm boring in office in Ottawa, so I just put up a background. For us, it was, as Daniel said, at the time I was sitting in an executive office, and then one of the lawyers came to me and said, "Hey, you really have to look at this ADR program. You really have to look at this conflict resolution. Can we plan a meeting?" And we said, "Yeah, sure. In a month or a month and a half, let's get together." And they brought over their head trainer, and we started discussing what were the tools and what were the intent and what were some of the core values and principles that were used within the program. And that really connected or resonated. I could see that there was something that was important there. I could see that this was going to help people. There are things that don't need to escalate and end up in a courtroom. There will always be a need for that type of mechanism too, but there are a lot of things that can be handled at a much sooner stage or can be handled with other processes. And so we looked at that and we looked at some of the values and we said, well, yes, this can help people, this can help families, this can help communities. This can really take things that are becoming obstacles for growth or for development within a community and help develop a process to get by that and to have real dialogues and real conversations. And so, as Daniel said, we had that initial meeting and we looked at the tools, which we're going to show you in the PowerPoint afterwards. We looked at some of those tools and we said, yes, this, it makes sense, but we really have to change the perspective on them because in an Indigenous environment, some of those won't be the same. There won't be the same realities. There won't be the same experiences. And in Indigenous community, there's this sense of collective obligations and collective rights. And there's areas where you work as a community and, you share as a community and, you make decisions together. And so there had to be a change in how it was and how it was presented in some of the ways that these ADR tools would be employed within a community. And so we said, well, for the first 2 years, we're going to bring up the 2 top trainers from the Canadian Institute of Conflict Resolution, and we're going to let them learn about us. We're going to learn about what are the front end jobs that deal in justice, that deal in corrections, that deal in social services, and in all the areas where people that are in conflict end up. And we said, we really want to look at that and we want to say, how do we create a better model? And how do we create a model that resonates with the values that come from that community, that come from those, that group? And so really the first 2 years, we are really reformulating everything. And like Daniel said, we've been together for 15 years now. When we first wrote this proposal, it was at 14, but we're at 15 now. And as Daniel said, the benefit to the Cree ADR type of training was that it takes the parties and empowers them to come up with the solution using their core values. They're using their ways. It's not imported from someone else. It's not, and all due respect to the adversarial process or other groups, they come in and they try their best to be fair. And in the past, fairness or justice has not really been the marker that Indigenous peoples have had or experienced with the more formal system. And we're working on that too. That's not the issue. But we thought that, well, let's empower people and see what happens. Let's start giving back that power to people to say, I can make a difference in other people's lives. And so we started the training and we started evolving the course and the materials as it went. And we had elders to the program to say, well, listen, it needs to resonate because no matter what, we looked at the Harvard Project on Economic Development. And of course, one of the core principles of anything that you put in, or any institution that you put into a community, is that they have to see themselves in it. So we had to make sure there was enough of us in there that people said, yeah, no, this makes sense. And it links to what we used to do or how we used to evolve, but we are still introducing tools. We're still empowering people, and we are still trying to get people to that point where they could handle more and they could identify issues. So one of the core trainings, and of course it's a very intensive course, in the first little while, the nonverbal communication or is there, but the underlying human identity needs. Why is someone acting anxious to you? Why is someone acting angry or frustrated or disconnected? And really understanding that it has nothing to do with you. I've sat in on prison exit programs where people have said that, they've ended up in the system and they said, well, my mother was always angry at me. And it wasn't until they actually saw a residential school film and understood intergenerational, the impact or the experience she went to and how that trickles down, that they understood that it was nothing that they did, that the mother was trying to deal with her own issues. And then from there, they could begin to heal. And as Daniel said, that whole concept of forgiveness is not about forgetting, but it's returning human dignity to people. It's about dignity, and it's about re-empowering people so that they, are more complete. It's more holistic. It's about us all being together. So when we looked at the program, when we started developing it, and we started, having the first level of graduates, I kept on getting the same thing. All the graduates would come to me and said, this has transformed my life. This is the most relevant training that I've ever experienced. And it's not only changed my life at work, but it's changed my life at home. I now understand, you know, dynamics that are happening there within my personal relationships and with relationships with others in the community. And we were saying, well, that's good. That's phenomenal. And every year we were running this program or this training, and we decided, well, some of the concepts we need to have described in Cree. It was very difficult for some people to understand some of the complex language we use when we talk about emotions and we talk about conflict. And so we said, well, we really need to start training Cree trainers. And so once we did that, we were able to explain in Cree some very difficult concepts, and then people just got it. People just thought, wow, this is phenomenal. And so we co-facilitate. We have people from CICR and people from our Cree trainers, we call them peacemakers. They come together and they work together and they come up with these trainings. And as Daniel said, we've done 14 contingents, so of doing this 4-week program, 160 hours of really understanding about underlying human identity needs and understanding processes that can help mediate or negotiate or to help people get to that to get past the conflict. So we looked at that, and then we started getting other organizations, because this is really good for organizations too. I made sure that all my staff, 80 some staff, took all this training, because they're dealing with the public on a regular basis, and there's going to be a barrage of emotions when you're dealing with the justice system or the correction system, and you need someone on the other end that understands why you're upset or why you're angry or what's going on with you, because they want to help you and they want to get you to that next stage, but they need to understand too that it has nothing to do with you on the other end of the phone, that people have this frustration, and you need to know how to address that and how to speak to that in a good way. So I made sure that all my staff took it. But then, so within the organization, I noticed that there was an improvement in the quality of the work environment. And I know, and during this training, you develop this team. You develop people that support each other and understand each other. They've gone through this experience where you've done a ton of exercises together, and so I noticed that I didn't have a lot of turnover. I noticed that people, other groups would come in and they would try and, because now my staff were trained, would try and come and pick them to go over to social services or to go to one of the other organizations. Uh, and my staff would stay because they enjoyed the environment, because they enjoyed the work they were doing. It wasn't about money. It was really about that connection and that sense of value, the sense that they were contributing and doing something that was important and meaningful in people's lives. And so I noticed that that happened, and I noticed that our front line was very much better. Our front line was had a much better approach when dealing with clients that were coming in that were, probably at some of the lowest points in their life, and their family that were coming in just traumatized by whatever was happening around them. And you need someone there that has that unique understanding. And so we knew that that was going well too, and so we offered it to others. So each contingent we put our staff in, and then we'd offer a few to the regional health board, a few to the regional school board. And the next thing you know, the school board said, well, we want something for all of our managers, all of our high level managers, but we can't devote 4 weeks. And so we said, well, we're going to create a managers program. We're going to take the best that a manager needs to know to do to work within their organization, to create an environment that can resolve conflict and that reduces, because with conflict and with all the stress and everything else, people tend to, like, they spiral a bit. They're taking more time off, their productivity and all that, this will go down or diminish, and they may leave the work, and then you have to find someone new. So they just said, we want all of our managers to have this type of training. So we developed a 1 week managers program on conflict resolution. How do you manage that within an organizational structure? And so we trained hundreds of people on this management structure. And then we had the health board come in with their frontline workers that work in social work and other places like that. And they said, we want the full week, the 4 week program. So then we started training a bunch of contingents or groups each year. So we would do one of our regular session, and then maybe 2 or 3 for the health board and social services. And then we would always every year do one for the Cree school board as well, for our regional school board. And then now we have a lot of the local municipal governments saying to us, we want to train all our managers on this too. And so we said, well, okay. And so then so some of them wanted the 4 week, and most of them want the 1 week because their managers are very busy. And so we've started that. So as Daniel says right now, like, I mean, this year, I'm sure we have, let's see, one, two, three, probably about 8 to 10 groups that are being trained by our trainers on conflict resolution. So that means that more and more people, as we get into the different organizations, into the different structures, on these very important skills and tools for conflict resolution, that we're getting more and more people in that community, the community of conflict resolution. So in that sense, it's been very successful in the sense of us building, and it's a good thing that we're building these peacemakers or these trainers, because we get so many requests now that we're going, well, we need to develop more trainers, we need to continue. And not only that, but then other people hear about it. Other people are saying, wow, like, we know that you're doing this incredible program that's working with Indigenous peoples. And I get requests from Australia or from places in the United States or from other countries to say to me, can you do something with us too? Can we work on something? And I'm like, well, yeah, like, I mean, wherever we can help, that's great, as long as we have enough, people power, as long as we have enough people that are trained in this area. So, for us, the formal court system, or the types of arbitration or other things. And also we had, as soon as the school board started taking this, that started to be built within their collective agreements that we could do conflict resolution with them. We were an opportunity, instead of going to arbitration, to first take a shot at mediation with our trained personnel. And so we started entering into those two, with the understanding that, of course, if you have a trained group of individuals that have those skills, then why wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't you try and resolve something more immediately than going through a long process, which then causes more trauma and causes more, probably more conflict. And of course, when you're dealing with Indigenous communities, you're dealing with, places where you're going to run into the people that you have a conflict with, or their families, on a fairly regular basis. So it's really important for you to say, yeah, we need to resolve this. It's not like living in a big city where you may not run into them. And most of the time, if you have conflict, it may be in the workplace, or it may be in some place that you frequent. And so you want to resolve those. And so those are the types of, situations where we say we want to de-escalate, and we want to bring people down to a level where, where there isn't something that's festering or growing, and there isn't something that's going to compound and involve more people, and then it's just going to morph outwards. We need people that are able to address it right away, and able to help people and coach people, or create a process where people can come together in a safe and neutral way and say, yeah, we can resolve this, we can do something really effective here. And so, yeah, I guess that's kind of the lead in to why we, invested in this. Why we said, yeah, we need to make a change here, because we can't just have, this formal system which comes up every now and then and makes determinations, and most of our people don't understand why they're incarcerated. In Cree, there's no word for guilt, and so when they're in a courtroom and they're asking someone that's not fluent in French or English, the translation is always, are you confused? And of course, people are confused by a process, right? So we don't necessarily believe that the overall process has always been fair in the background. And we wanted to create more of that understanding to say, okay, well, we'll involve the community, and we'll involve more people in the, in this area, in the demographic of a community, to create processes and an environment where we can do it in a way that everyone has confidence in and that they believe in. So I guess that's a little bit of an introduction. So I don't know, Daniel, if you want to go to some slideshow and show them some tools, and of course we're open to, to questions throughout.
Thank you, Don, for this introduction to what you have seen has been a very a very powerful process, and this has only been done because of the interest that you and other directors at the Cree Nation government has had in making this possible. It's not easy to bring people through a 4-week training. And I want to show you just the benefits and the approach that usually we have at CICR and with the Cree CICR, but what has been different and what has been the special outcomes that we have learned in these 15 years and 14 groups of partnership, 14 years of groups with different Cree institutions and departments. I believe now you are able to see a slide deck too. And what I want to go is from my experience in learning from the Cree trainers, from the CICR trainers, and from participants in the past 5 years. I have seen that there are things that make the CICR and the Cree CICR program different from other just trainings or workshops that people usually get. And the first thing is that is not about the content. Yes, I think ADR or conflict resolution is an excuse to be in a space together, and the space together becomes the learning experience of dealing with my approach to conflict and being better at listening and communication. So CICR believes that training is an intervention. While we put that excuse of being in a training room, we are shifting the relationships among the people of the group. So I will go up a little bit about the main tools that we have and content, but also in how this became more of a learning community and adaptations that we did to the Cree CICR program. So CICR has built a training that is in supporting people on being a third-party neutral across a broad spectrum of ADR, of informal conflict resolution approaches. There are many options, and we say we can support first in your own work in negotiating, in dealing with conflict, in approaching things, and in coaching one-on-one, and supporting others as a third-party neutral. In the context of the Cree CICR, it's not third-party neutral practitioners, but peace practitioners, peacekeepers. And this approach of getting people comfortable to support each other as a community in this broad spectrum of unassisted and assisted conflict resolution options brings principles that we have as CICR called the principles of a third-party neutral, and is how do I do as my presence as a practitioner to bring about the respect and the process for other people to be in a respectful dialogue, in an inclusive dialogue. And these principles of doing more good than harm, and coming out without being involved in a conflict, really supporting as a practitioner, seek to honor community-based core values. And this was the foundation of CICR 30 something years ago. It was defined, we are going to be community-based, and we are going to do processes and learn and teach other people and communities, build capacity to have processes that pursue and honor these community-based core values of conflict resolution, and is seeking that every training fosters dignity and respect of all community members, and that dignity and respect will foster the trust for any process, that these processes are inclusive, that everybody in the community has a voice and a choice in how they are doing these things together, that they are positively centered, that we are creating opportunities for them to address conflicts while healing and building their relationships. So positively centered in a training. These 4 weeks of a process is a positively centered approach. Vision-based with the community thinking, what do we need to do to structure processes that benefit us as a community? How do we do it in a way that is sustainable? And how do we are responsive to the specific needs and the complexity of conflict that is carried by that community? And so this is the CICR DNA. And this is why and how we learned from each interaction with each community, if it's international, if it's in Canada, or is with a First Nation. And another core has to do with what we are doing today in this PD Day, going beneath the surface, and is learning that we need to understand that conflict, there's a river below the river of the positions and the interest, and that we are touching identity needs and values. That's where the rooted conflict or the things that some people are working on. So we learn to work on all layers of conflict and have different outcomes and interventions, but not resolve something without taking into account the human identity needs. And this is a simplified model of CICR director back in 2000, Dr. Bernd Redekop, as part of the process of training with CICR, developing the third-party neutral program. He was also learning and simplify this approach of human identity needs and our longing as humans to have meaning in what we do, to have a connection, to have a sense of security in our lives, to be recognized for what we do, who we are, and to be empowered, to have an action and control over our own lives. And that brings the sense of self and identity, and that's a foundation of what we do. And I'm gonna stop because it's not about these conflict resolution teachings, but how these have touch different generations. This is from last year. We have already generation 14 finishing soon. And the graduates that went over a 4-year program, and as other Cree institutions, Cree School Board, the Cree Health Board, has been working on a program to bring the traditional approaches to healing and supporting and community healing in the Nishiyu program. And every member of this program has been taking the training. So the training has been having an outcome that goes beyond just conflict resolution. And here is some of the participants of the Cree CICR training team, and that includes 2 elders in this photo, Janie and Roderick Pachano. And I think that what I want to say is there were things that shifted in what we did in the program with them, and in what we do with CICR. And one that is we teach people to be part of a learning community. In the case of the Cree CICR is the learning TP community, and that sense of reconnecting with their own processes, circle processes, dialogue processes, and way of being together that they have lost because of the impact of colonization. And in that learning community, sharing is the teaching. We learn from each other. We learn to listen. We learn to be listened to. We listen to our own voices in order to talk. And by sharing, the process and the magic happens. And the experiencing is the teaching. So we learn by doing, we learn by practicing. It's all experiential learning by activities, role plays, case studies. However, in the Cree CICR, there were no case studies. There were true stories, and true stories that require sometimes for the training process to stop and to honor and acknowledge the voices of the people that were sharing. And by creating a safe space for dialogue where people feel confident enough to listen to their own voices, to feel confident and brave enough to speak in the process of the group, there's something that is happening, and I learn to be part of a community where I am learning and growing too. And empowering is the teaching. The other process of the learning community is that we learn by doing. And part of something that I love about our partnership with the Cree CICR is that we abandoned with the CICR here is doing community dialogues facilitated by the participants that took that training at the end of the training. So it ends with an invitation from them to go with people and host that space of being with others, bringing community members, facilitate a question that is future-oriented, that recognizes something in the community that is of interest and relevance, and then create that safe space for dialogue, bring solutions and empower community members to feel that they can have a say and a choice in things that matters for their community. So they learn by doing and having this experience. And then the adaptation to the Cree Nation of the EU, ISTI, has been not only with some pieces, as Don said at the beginning, of trying to learn about some cultural values and animals and stories that were adapted to be part of more of the context and the traditions, but also adding the teachings, the stories, and the wisdom teaching of the Cree as part of the training that in the last years has been having elders, but not elders just there as token elders that are the beginning at the end, and just no, elders that have become part of the training team and that are there in that space of connection and belonging, sharing and learning things among them. And in terms of what I feel that the outcomes have been, that we have seen, and I can feel it at every community dialogue where we have people coming from from inland or the coast or cities outside to a community dialogue, connected in some way with their Cree identity, but not knowing the other people in the community. They come to the community dialogue as guests with some fears, not feeling that they know exactly how to participate. And then you see how they start building trust. They do an icebreaker, they start building trust. And suddenly we are all deeply learning to listen, touched by the stories and the sharing of the others, and recognizing how it's having an impact on us, and even going deeper in our self-awareness. Having a sense of belonging that participates after that. And I want to say that the outcomes that I have seen in these past community dialogues is that there is a sense of restored identity. People connect with their culture and become aware of the historical issues that they are experiencing as a nation. And then the capacity building then comes from this understanding, how they are getting together and facilitating process for empowerment and reconciliation, everything in the context of self-determination. There are some differences that come with the teachings, but one outcome that I see and that we have seen clearer is that the training goes smaller, slower to go faster. There needs to be taken time to hear the voices and hear the stories of the impacts of colonization. We know the impacts of colonization came with a broken spirit, with the self, a sense of self and connection and belonging. The community lost its language, its tradition, its culture, its dignity, in suffering and going through abuse, and its connection with their families. So there's also dealing with the trauma, with the impacts, and the need of hearing. And the impact that we see in the training of this historical context is that many people had lost the capacity to become aware of their gifts. They were more aware of their flaws, their mistakes, the lateral violence that happens in the community, the fact that they are not recognized as individuals or community. And the journey that happens honors this unrecognized need, and it acknowledges this historical context and empowers people to find a way to resolve them through the tools that they are learning in the context of their traditions and their culture. People who were shut down, who were not talking, who were with a resistance of opening things from the past, started opening up and sharing. It's something that they hadn't seen before, that it was so easy for them to connect and share with others of things that were of importance that they weren't sharing before. And in that space where they were heard and acknowledged, they felt the restoration of the human spirit. I heard several times, I now know who I am. And so this restore identity question, people becoming aware of who they are, acknowledging who they are, and becoming who they are, is that self-awareness pillar of the beginning of the journey. But then it's also restoring connection, belonging. Many were feeling isolated and not part of the sense of who are we in our EU identity. And then the sense of being with others and having opportunities, and there are other processes that Don Nicholls does that are in the land, connected to the land, to go in and enter in the bush. But the bonding had been destroyed in many levels across generations. So we hear from people is saying, being in this training and acknowledging and hearing my voice, gaining confidence of understanding who I am, changed my relationships at home, as a mother, as a father, as a brother, sister, son, daughter. The communication pattern changes from being silent to hearing their voice. Before, there was an agreement that we will not talk about it. But now they understand the difference between a passive consensus and an active consensus. So they are breaking the silence. And that has had a huge impact in the relational level. Now they speak about important things in a safe space. They share their voice, and they regain that capacity to listen also to themselves, but to listen to others with their heart and their spirit. So they're rebuilding and connections between their families, the broader families in the community, their colleagues, and the mandates that they are having in the Department of Justice and other parts of the training. So because many of them there were justice officers working with victims, with youth, with inmates, but now everybody in their different in the different mandates, and at the end also it changes the connections and belonging, even with groups that were not listening to each other. So something beautiful and the magic of having this circle process is that you have some young employees and you have elders or even chiefs and deputy chiefs in the group, and you start having conversations where the youth say, I have never had the chance to listen to the teachings of the elders in the way that I listen now. And now I understand things that how I wasn't listening to this that is crucial and important of me. And the elders are listening to the youth in a way that is honoring a different process and is not directional or judgmental, but is open and flexible and compassionate. So the restoring the connections in the relational patterns as a community, as a Cree community, it's has been important, and we have here people trying to continue the work and the journey and doing these processes more with others. And we believe that that empowerment of more community members, empowering other community members, doing it in Cree language, teaching, we teach 100%, most of the time is 50% in English, 50% in Cree, the training, but empowering to train and have a dialogue in their own language. And being part of this process is a privilege that we have had with CICR and with Don Nicholls that we wanted to share with you. And we are here for 50 minutes to listen to any questions that you want to have about the approach, about the outcomes, about the process that you have started, Don. So we are welcome to hear from you.
Thank you, Daniel and Dawn. That was a fantastic presentation. I love how you spoke about sort of community empowerment as a form of restoring identity at an individual, family, community level. Absolutely brilliant work. Thank you. Anybody who has questions, please place them in the chat. We'd be happy to answer them. And if time does run out, we're supposed to end here at 12:15. If time runs out, you'll be able to connect with the presenters and the host for any additional questions.
And as you're formulating the question, I just wanted to I just wanted to add that you know, part of the thing with with the Cree CICR program is that the trainers, they go off to the United Nations and they work in Africa and they work in like Bhutan and the Congo with warlords, and they get, so they're not only working with us, they're going over to the United Nations, and then they're going to Lawyers Without Borders and doing work around the world as well. They worked in Bosnia and they, as Daniel said, Rwanda, and based upon these principles and based upon the teachings and the skills that you acquire in this program, really it's had an impact around the world. And so when we looked at that, we said, well, if they can handle the tough conflicts that are happening in these diverse cultures, then how much more so can we do it here at home with some of our indigenous groups? And so we decided, this is probably a program that we can adapt well, and that we can work with, and that will have some positive results for conflict. So anyway, I just wanted to add that. Does the community hold leadership responsibility for lateral violence? We do have a part of the session. We have Vern Redekup, who wrote a whole book on lateral violence and did a lot of his work in Bosnia and goes to Budapest every year to talk about lateral violence. He teaches our lateral violence section, right? And so hopefully those impacts, you plant the seeds and you tell people the impacts of lateral violence and how it harms people. And you hope that those will take hold. As Daniel said, our grand chief right now, she's a graduate of the program. The chief of our largest community is a graduate of the program. All of my managers and staff have graduated from the program, and we sought to have strong leadership that will advocate these principles so that we can address some of the lateral violence that happens. Of course, we know a lot of lateral violence happens through social media, and so we're trying to address that as well. But yeah, definitely we we've created policies on it. We created ways to try and address it, and we want people to grow positively. We don't want people to be harming each other using, you know, these type of things, and using social media as a tool in that way. So yeah, definitely we have a lateral violence component. Any of these reserves near Peterborough involved in your training? Not in this one. Definitely, we've had Cree that do live in Peterborough and that have been over there. I've gone to university there or that, but no, they're not over there. We're definitely open to working with other groups that are throughout Ontario, and to say, you know, like, I mean, we were able to adapt and make sure that those core values are there. They may not be the same core values that that Indigenous group may have, and that's part of the thing. Is before we start the training, we get our lead trainers to talk to the community or to the organization, depending if it's an organization, and find out what their needs are and who they are, and make sure that we tailor it to that group to make sure that it has real meaning or impact to whatever situation they're going to face, or whatever issues that are most important within that group, or that are considered a priority.
Thank you.
I'll leave the chat open here for any additional questions that might be coming in. Well, I do actually have a question, both for either Daniel or Dawn. How are you connecting with these communities? Are they seeking you out, or are you sort of reaching out to the communities to say this is what we offer, and they take an interest from there? How does the initial connection start?
Like everything, if you present something to an Indigenous community, there's going to be a little bit of reluctance at the beginning to say, hey, you know, what is this new thing and what does it have to do with me? I don't know how many programs that we've launched, and people go, well, wait a second, if I go into that program, that means that I have a problem, or someone in my family has a problem, or there's something. They worry about being stigmatized. So what we do is, you know, we offer it and we invite people, and then word of mouth spreads. And so that's why we have an incredible waiting list to get into the program. Every year we may have, you know, we may put 20, you know, anywhere from 16 to 20 people into a new program, any one of the ones. And like I said, we're doing about 8 or 9 now, but um, you know, we may have 40 people that applied or want to be in there because they've heard on how great it is. And I remember one time we had one of my staff, she had graduated from the program, and then the next year her husband was there, and he was like a business manager within the local government, within the band council. And he said, I'm here because my wife told me I had to come and take this program. It's just amazing. And sure enough, he was incredible in that group. But a lot of it is just us picking and choosing and creating a group that will create networks too, and to spread that word out there of the benefits, and to spread those tools out there, because regardless of what people do, they will always have these ADR tools in their disposal. And the first picture that Daniel showed on his PowerPoint was one of our first refresher courses. So for people that had taken it, like, you know, the 10 years ago or what have you, we said, well, they keep asking if they can retake it. And we're saying, well, you don't need to retake the whole thing, but we'll give you a 2-day refresher on all the core principles. And that's that big circle that you saw at the beginning where people were coming in. And that's just with my staff. Now, if we did that with the whole, I'm sure that we could hold a big conference on that, on refreshing the skills, and everyone wants to go back to those too. So really it's word of mouth. Really it's, you know, people see the positive impact and they want it. They want more. And so we really, you know, within our nation, it's just spreading that way. How is technology utilized in conflict resolution within the program? What are the potential benefits and drawbacks? Well, definitely during COVID, we had to run we continued to run our program during COVID, even though we couldn't come together. As you know, in the North, we don't have respirators. We don't have a lot of things to deal with COVID. And so we had to isolate. We had to, put up a little gate to come into our communities, a community of 5,000 or 6,000, you'd have a gate, and you'd have to check in and out and tell where you were going. And you'd have to isolate if you were going someplace to the south where there may be a higher incident. And so we had, so we had to isolate. But we said to ourselves, we can't stop these programs. We want to continue to have them going. And so we did them all virtually. And so people still benefited, and still people were like, wow, I get to. And of course, we did that with the courts too. The courts, we didn't want, court staff coming in and out and prisoners coming in and out of detention areas. So we did everything virtually. I built in all 9 of my justice facilities these fiber optic cables and these wonderful video conferencing. And so we can do a court case or an arbitration or training like this all virtually, all on a regular basis. And so because we did that during COVID, at that gathering that you saw at the beginning with the circle, we took the graduates of that never had a chance to have an in-person graduation, and we put them in the center, and we graduated them there again. And we said, since you graduated during COVID, we're all going to recognize and acknowledge you right here now. And we all clapped, and we did this wonderful little ceremony for them so that they could actually have a ceremony for what they had accomplished. So technology is good. And of course, we reach out and we say, well, sometimes you can't always travel to where a conflict is. And so we offer some of that coaching or some of the, other benefits. I think that technology is good when you're talking about remote areas where people, you don't have a lot of resources. So in a community of 5,000 or 6,000, you may have a few social workers there, but a psychologist comes in every 3 months and and it probably takes 2 years to get on their waiting list. So you're not going to have a lot of professional expertise there. What you need are people that can help you, bring you to a better place, and help you with conflicts that may be paralyzing you or impacting you. So sometimes we use that too, where we just use technology to complement the conflict resolution, where we might have a professional like a psychologist or a social worker connect with the individuals that need to help them through part of that process of healing.
And just to add to that, obviously it's always better to have a process in person. And for the community, the circle was something natural to them because they always did that before. But with the Cree CICR, they have felt empowered to reconnect with their own values and principles of sharing the circle and respecting the voice of everyone. But they are also learning how to create a different way to heal and live and connect with modernization. And something interesting and part of doing these circle processes online during the pandemic and having a community dialogue and people coming and honoring the same principles of the circle was also a beautiful discovery. Although it's always better to be in person and there's another set of connection, there's the tested practice that they had and they are implementing when it's needed and possible.
If we don't have any other questions, then I want to just take the time to thank you both very much for today. That was a fantastic presentation. On behalf of the Provincial ADR Advisory Committee, we can't thank you enough for participating, and for our registrants today for taking the time to come here and learn. I believe registrants, you guys are heading back over to the main room and then off to lunch, and we will see you again this afternoon. Thank you both very, very much.
Oh, it was our pleasure. Very good. Thank you.
Take good care.
Have a great